Hi, hello everyone. Uh, so in this video, what we want to cover is just to have some basic camera, and camera we want to have perspective projection because this will allow us to kind of see 3D. And I'm going to explain it real soon, but important part is we're going to have to learn all about view camera and then the perspective camera as well, and then we can multiply them. And usually our logic for that is going to be we're going to multiply our projection times view matrix times model matrix times our vertex. So let's actually start with it. And usually this would be presented in reverse, but that depends on row major or column major order. Since our shader is a column major, we're just going to be doing first projection view, then transform, then the vertex itself. So maybe I should actually explain just quickly what the view and projection are. I'm going to leave links in some of my other videos where I go into depth about that, but here I just want to keep it short. So let's start with view matrix because it's easier one. Let's say that this is our world and we can ignore z for now. We're just going to have y and x. And let's say that we want to take a look at origin here. So we can define camera in terms of position. Let's say that we want to have some camera, and we can say it will be at position here. Let's say x is 5 here, so it can be 5. It can be 3 in y. We can say here 3, and for z we can just place 0. I just don't want to worry about third dimension for now. So we have here 3. So that's one property of a view matrix. One property is position. The second property is actually we have to define up vector. So we have to define up vector, and that's always going to be 0, 1, 0, right? It's very common to have y for up. And the third property that we want to have is like a target. Where should it look at? And let's say the target here is maybe 0, 0, 0. So here we might have our cube or quad or whatever. We want to create camera at this position with this subvector, and we want for it to take a look at this 0, 0, 0 direction. So that's it regarding the view matrix. So this is what view matrix defines. Now about perspective matrix, let's say that we're looking in some direction here, and here's some axis. So perspective matrix is going to define our field of view, right? So if we imagine having some objects here, right? So the bigger field of view would result in objects being smaller and being able to see more. So let's say that this one is at the edge, but if we increase the field of view, we can see more. So one property is field of view. The second property, right? Let's just create that field of view, and we're looking somewhere in this direction. The second property would be view volume. Let's say we can define that we can see like maybe 100 units far, and then here we can say that usually it's going to be some small number, 0.1, and everything that's in this view volume will be visible. What's outside it won't be visible, it will be clipped. So we have z near and z far, and the last property is just aspect ratio, and we usually set it to ratio for screen. In our case it's 800, and we get aspect ratio just by dividing width over height. So these are kind of properties, and I would suggest maybe we just start with the camera, because it will be easier to understand, and then you can play with the values and try to understand them. It's not that hard. Like I mentioned, I will leave more detailed descriptions of video of perspective and view matrix in the video, and how can you actually derive them. But let's actually go and create the camera. So I'm just going to create a new directory, call it camera. The first projection that we're going to cover is perspective. So I'm just going to call it perspective camera. Right, and let's start with it. So it's going to need bunch of properties. So I would start probably from position. So let's just define it as vector 3b here, float position. All right, I have to resolve this. Yes, I want to import it. Not the rotation, but I can keep this. It's going to be origin, or better yet, target. I'm not sure why origin. And position, we can just set it at some 3, 3, 3, I guess, -3 maybe. It's not that important. We're going to play with the position a bit later. So what did I mention? Yeah, we need to have up vector, and by default just 0, 1, 0. So by default it's going to be y. Aspect ratio, we're going to set it to 0, but we're actually going to get it a bit later by dividing our height and width. Field of view, that's going to be important. I'm going to go with 60, but we're going to have to convert that to radians a bit later. Then the third and the fourth is near plane and far plane. So this is our view volume. So how does this actually work, right? So this view volume, I already mentioned it. As you know, our buffer is set up to go z buffer from 0 to 1, right out that buffer. But through the matrix multiplication, we can actually kind of model it to go from 0 to 1 to 1000. It's just that these things are going to get mapped to this, right? And that's done through the matrices. So that's the magic here. What else? We're going to need to have, I want to have actually uniform buffer. And here we're going to store our matrices. So let's just create it. And I'm just going to call it buffer. No need for anything else. And then we can have constructor perspective camera. I think defaults are fine for almost all of this. And then I just want to create that buffer. We need to pass engine in. Engine. And it would be nice to have labels as well, so I'm just going to call it perspective camera buffer. I think we need to initialize that buffer as well. We're going to do it here. We need to pass some data in, so I'm just going to by default paste matrix, identity matrix. And we're going to have update. So in update, I just want to create those matrices and then multiply them. So we're going to have matrix, this one, and we call it perspective. And here it has this method, create perspective field of view. So we need to paste the field of view. So here it's just some math helper, degrees to radians. So we can actually create that class. It might be useful. So where do I want it? I kind of want to rename this actually to something like WebGPU utils. So WebGPU utils. And here I want to have math utils. Let's create it. Not the directory. I actually want to have a class. And then we can have public float degrees to radians. And here this is good suggestion. So it's just converting degrees to radians because the degrees are easier for us to use, but this method expects actually the radians. So what I forgot to do is to make it static. It's still complaining though. That's interesting. Is it named differently? It is. My bad. So yeah, this is our perspective. Then we can create view matrix. So it's made up of position, target, and up vector. And then we can create projection view or view projection. So we can just create it like this. But here is important part. So if we were doing this in shader, if we were pasting two separate matrices in shader, we would have to actually this would be correct because it is column major order. But here we're working with row major, so we're just going to replace this like this. So be mindful of that. In shader, it would be reversed, right here. And we're going to have to paste that to shader, but I think we're done here with the matrix for now. Let's just focus then on shader. In our shader, what we want to do is just have another group, which is going to be group 1, and then binding 1. So not the view, it's going to be perspective view matrix. And then we can just take it here. So be mindful of this group 1 binding 1. And here we just have to make this a group 2 now, what we had in our fragment part of the shader. And then we can go to our unlit render pipeline. And here we just have to handle additional camera group, I guess, camera. So we're going to paste it in actually here, perspective camera. So that's fine. It can be read-only, perspective camera. What are we going to need? We're going to need pine group layout in pine group. So camera, pine group layout, and then same is for pine group. And then we just have to create them somewhere. So not here. Here we have bind groups. So I'm just going to call it model bind group layout entries. So here I'm just going to rename to model. That's all right. Model layout descriptor, just some renaming so that we don't confuse. Model bind group layout descriptor. Okay. It could have been called transform, I see now, but yeah, whatever. And then we can say here. So it's going to be very similar to this. So I'm just going to shamelessly copy paste this. So here for our camera, so we can just say here camera. So binding is still 0, so that's good. Visibility is vertex and it's of type uniform, so that's good. And then descriptor, we're going to have one small change here because we're going to call this camera, so that's quite alright. Here we have to change it to this, right? And this is also, let's change it here, and I have to paste this here, and then this is wrong. All right, so we have that. Now we just have to, so this is a lot of manual work. It's not that exciting, but we need to set this up so that we can actually do like different types of cameras, maybe orbit or camera for first-person shooter, which we're going to need in the future. But let's see further what do we need. Create binding groups. So here we're just going to take one. Oh wow. Here we're just going to have one for the camera as well. I'm just going to shamelessly copy paste as usual. But I'm going to call this one model, I guess, entries, and then rename. Let's rename that beta. And here model bind group descriptor, model bind group descriptor. So this one, let's rename now actually. This one can become bind group entries. So be mindful now here, right? We have to change buffer and buffer size to what was in our camera. And then we had buffer, and here buffer.size. All right, that's good. Descriptor Could even leave it like this, but just for clarity. Bind. There. And then here. I think this is good. Let me just see. Okay, this is not good. So we need in file group layout. Here it's transform, here it's model. Right, you can fix it. I should probably do it at one point, but not right now. Anyway, we're probably going to change this sound and the pipeline quite a bit. But we have the bind group now, and we just need to paste that layout in somewhere where we create the pipeline, and it's right here because we're now going to have the third one. We move this one to second one, right? But the first or second entry, better yet, becomes our camera bind layout. So we're good here, and here make sure to change count to 3. Very important, otherwise you might get errors. And then when we're binding, so here we can just say group index 1. We have to change this to 2, right? For our texture bind group, it's now 2, and then it's a camera bind group. And I think we're even good here. So it might even compile. Let's see. Okay, it might not. So cannot convert from string. Aha, we never created it. So let's just do that step real quick. So we're going to have to move this, and you know what? I'm going to remove this second one. I don't want it right now. I don't want to deal with it. So we're just going to remove all of this, and then here it's not going to be initialized here anymore. Our perspective camera can be, or it cannot because we have to pass engine in. So we're going to say now, and then in our initialize we have this, right? So we're just going to say only train the pipeline, but before that we actually have to create our engine, and then we can just paste it in here. Just some minor fixes. If I try to run it now, alright, we get some error, probably something that I forgot. Alright, let's quickly check it. Object reference set to instance of object 191. Let's see what's there. I believe our camera, we didn't do something properly. Yeah, did I assign it? Probably not. Did I assign it here? Of course not. So I just have to say this. And then it might be fine. Alright, we get different error. Let's quickly fix that. So let's see. Call the command buffering or in the pipeline. So I probably haven't initialized something properly or set something properly. Let's see. Now shader, and this is group 1, this is good. It's used here, so this must be good. Here our only render pipeline. Let me see quickly. So texture. Let's see, we have the one for the camera. That's quite alright, I think. Entries, camera binding group entries, and the model binding group entries. So I'm fairly confident this is good. Then texture binding group entries, that doesn't concern me right now. Transform, here I could have made a mess. Camera binding group entries, camera binding group descriptor, and we use it to create camera bind group. That's good. So let me just check this real quickly here above. When we're creating this one is good as well. Alright, maybe pipeline layout. So this seems good as well. All right, line group, something. It says right here, group 1 binding 1 is not available in the layout pipeline layout. So yeah, it says it right here, my bad. So I probably should have used here 0, and then it's good. Yep, that's it. And some other properties that I want to have is just rotation. So here we're just going to call create rotation, create rotation y. We're just going to say some rotation, and then we're going to get rid of this scale, but we can actually rotate it each frame by some small amount, 0.01f. We can get rid of this scale thing. I'm going to get rid of this thing here, rotation, and then we're just going to set it to 0. And if I try to run it now, we can see our quad rotating, and thus we have 3D. So we're probably going to need some models in the future, actually proper 3D models, but for now this will suffice. For the next time I want to handle input and kind of organize all of this into kind of scenes, right? So that we can switch between our scenes that have some kind of tests. And I want to do input because we're going to probably need to create first person camera where we can move around, right? So that's also on the agenda. And yeah, that's it for this video. So this was a quick one, or maybe not so quick. I don't know what's the length, but if you want to go deep into how to do perspective and view matrix and how they work, I have already explained this in some other videos, which I'm going to link in the description of the video. So that's it for this time. Yeah, all the best.